If you've been paying attention to what Dave Castro's been saying, then you'd know in theory for the CrossFit Games to get bigger, it has to get smaller. The 2024 CrossFit Games is going to look very different. A new location, the majority of the events being held indoors, and now with the latest news regarding the age group and adaptive divisions, we have the final piece of the puzzle to see not just what the games will look like, but really the direction it's heading in. So should we be surprised that these changes are happening? Not really. Many were predicting something was going to happen with the age group and adaptive divisions due to the location and duration of the games in 2024. But even before that, in fact, after the games finished this year, really what everyone should have done is taken their idea of what the CrossFit Games is and how it looks, screwed it up and thrown it away. Because at a press conference at the CrossFit Games, when asked about the decision to move venues, Dave Castro's answer revealed that big changes were coming.
But there's a few things that that have gone into the decision to make this happen. One, I really do think in the future for the sport, it does need to move around. And it does need to hit other locations and other cities. And the intent here, too, was actually to leave a few years ago. But for whatever reasons, we decided to extend for a couple additional years. And as great as it's been, having a new look, a new venue, a new city is the right move for the future of the sport. For where we want to take this, for what we want to do, staying in one location is not the right strategy. With that comes also rethinking how we do all of this. And definitely, I've been thinking a lot, and the team has been thinking a lot about how we execute on these. And this is a massive layout. This is a massive venue. This is a massive event. So to actually put it in a place to where we can someday maybe end up in Brazil, someday end up in Europe, replicating a format or a venue or a games event like this is not incredibly scalable, especially when you talk about overseas venues. So we are rethinking and re-looking at different ways to do this going forward to give us that flexibility.
So the intention is pretty clear. The CrossFit Games needs to become portable. If it is going to travel to different cities and different locations, not just in America, but in other parts of the world too, well, realistically, in its current format, that's impossible. So what we really need is to know that if we find the right-sized venue, well, then we can hold about 95% of the games. Why about 95%? Well, again, listening to Dave Castro. You may have heard people talking about his comments on the Mic Drop podcast, where he mentioned that 95% of the games would be inside because of the heat. But it's important to have context to what he was saying. In fact, what did he say just before mentioning that it was going to be inside?
One of the things I did when I was put back in the position of running the games was instantly say, okay, for the sake of just freshness, we kind of need to move, and we're going to change the format of the CrossFit Games. Going to a venue like Dickies would be perfect. So I had our team look in to see if Dickies was available for 2024, and Dickies came back and said yes, they are. So we said let's do it, and so we had to tell Madison, who we had an additional year with, hey. And I had to tell them, like, hey, we want to move it. We're going to do it differently. We're going to have a different footprint. And so kind of starting with that new model in a new location makes a lot of sense. And so they were kind of upset, but it's the right thing to do. It's what I really want to do, kind of rotate to different locations, take it to a cool place like this. And so the games just happened 2 weeks ago, maybe 2.5 weeks ago, I think. And so our team came out here to kind of get our first, as a team, walkthrough of the venue. I haven't been to the venue since November of 2021. And so see the venue, see the city, go to the stockyards, stay in downtown, have some, kind of feel it. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be a great location for the games. 95% of the events are going to be inside the arena.
Which is good, because you're going to kill people if they're outside.
Because it's air conditioned.
Yeah.
But
So did you notice, again, Castro talks about the format of the CrossFit Games, the footprint of the games. It is the venue itself that is the draw. The 95% being inside, it seems like that's convenient considering the heat, not that that is a reaction to the heat. And let's just follow this through to its logical conclusion. Removing weather as a condition for finding a location for the CrossFit Games makes things a lot easier. Remember when we couldn't have rope climbs because they were too wet because it had rained? Well, if the Games was being held in England, that would be inevitable. Or what if it went to somewhere even hotter and more humid than Texas? So removing the need to find the ideal weather conditions for that period of time when the Games is being held makes it a lot easier. You just need to find the right venue. But what about the other 5% of the CrossFit Games? Well, again, if we're moving to different parts of the world, different cities, that would enable them to use unique features of that area to put on something special the year they host the Games. Very similar to what we saw with the Sanctionals events. And when we think about the growth of CrossFit internationally, well, this all makes sense. Knowing that the Games could be coming to a location closer to you, that you may actually be able to go and see it in person, maybe for the first time, maybe the only time, well, that's going to make it more interesting. And the more new people that can actually go to the Games in person, well, that's got to be good for growth as well. Even for the athletes, maybe they pick up new followers just because they had a nice interaction with someone at the CrossFit Games. And what about the people that don't even do CrossFit? Well, when they hear that the biggest stage of competition, the CrossFit Games, is coming to their hometown, well, that could be enough to pique their interest and see what this CrossFit thing is all about. And of course, there are many other benefits that would come from scaling down the size of the CrossFit Games. It's probably going to cost less money. It's going to be far easier to broadcast, and if it's a better broadcast, that's probably easier to sell. So on the surface, I'm sure you would agree that it does make sense why the Games would move in this direction. However, that doesn't mean it is without casualties. We could think to our age group and adaptive athletes. Now, if you're not aware, the adaptive and age groups will not be at the CrossFit Games in 2024. Instead, there will be 3 separate competitions, one for the teens, one for the masters, and one for the adaptive athletes. And this has been met with mixed reactions. Now, while there are positive and negatives in both regards, I would love to know what you think about this change because this will be the topic of my next video. But if we're honest, we all knew something had to change, and at least we can follow the logic behind the changes being made. But what do you think? Is a portable version of the CrossFit Games the thing that can push it to the next level? Or is this a watered down version of the Games we used to know and love? Please let me know what you think in the comments below.